Hi, and welcome to the Dog Gym Training Foundation course. There are thousands of dog trainers out there, and choosing the right one is really tough. On top of that, you're faced with all manner of different labels and explanations about what sort of dog you actually own. My dog is dominant, or my dog is submissive. My dog's a Dalmatian, or my dog's a chocolate Labrador and therefore crazy. It's hoped by following this course that you see an improvement in both your dog's obedience, but more importantly, in the relationship between you and your dog. Let's move into part one, basic needs. Humans love to categorise things, but when it comes to your dog, what does that achieve? After you've labelled your dog as dominant, for example, how does that make you feel about them? But more importantly, how does it make you treat them? The problem with labels is that they stick and they affect the way that people treat you. If a teacher, for example, describes their student as a lazy waste of time, what's the likelihood that they're going to spend time and effort nurturing their student to become better? It's more likely that they'll treat the student with contempt and stop putting in effort to train them. First and foremost, your dog is an animal, and whilst it's useful to understand that he or she can be showing dominant tendencies over a toy or food, for example, it's not helpful, in my opinion, to label your dog as a dominant alpha male, for example. Why? Put simply, it's because by labelling your dog, you're more likely to think about them differently. My dog's trying to dominate me, so I'll try and stop that by dominating him first. Instead, by understanding that your dog is reacting to certain stimuli when he tries to keep his toy or barks at the window, means that you can identify why he's reacting in such a way and employ a strategy to change his behaviour to suit your circumstances. I say to suit your circumstances because you may not always want to change the behaviour. Society would suggest that some behaviour is wrong, such as allowing your dog upstairs or on the bed. But if it's not upsetting you or anyone else, then why change it? However, you should be mindful that it could be confusing to your dog if you have conflicting rules. You can get on the chair at home, but you can't get on the chair at grandparents' house. That's not to say you couldn't teach your dog this, given time and patience. So now I've mentioned the word patience, I suppose I should stress it's essential that you are patient and consistent in your training. If you haven't got the patience to teach a dog, then you're always going to struggle to teach them. Before we begin, call your dog over, look into their eyes and forget everything they've done that's ever been by way of unwanted behaviour. Peeing on the floor, chewing the table leg, barking at the neighbours. Put it all out of your mind and focus on your dog. Remembering their past foibles is not going to help. It's unlikely that your dog is thinking about yours. Instead, focus on the current situation. Remember how much you love the dog and think about all the fun that you can have with them. Focusing on the past will only get in the way of training the dog now. Don't think about the dog in a negative way. Stop yourself from saying, my dog can't do that. There are very few dogs that aren't capable of behaving well. It's unlikely that you've got one who isn't capable. Instead, focus on the bond that you want to develop with your dog. Dogs are such wonderful creatures. They're capable of displaying affection to us even when we grumble at them or we totally ignore them. Thinking about them in this context helps us to be more caring towards them, and by caring for them and giving them back some of that affection, we'll increase that bond between us and them. As a dog handler, your aim should always be to improve the bond that you've got between yourself and your dog. By doing this, you're not going to impede the dog's learning ability. Let's move into part one, basic needs. So, you've bought a dog, be it from a rehoming centre or from a reputable breeder, and you've brought it home. What now? I'm not going to go into whether you've chosen the right one or talk about what you need to provide by way of bedding or toys, although I am going to talk about keeping your dog entertained at a later date. What I am going to do is tell you what your dog needs. What are its basic needs? Dogs have few basic needs, and we're all capable of providing them and keeping our new pet happy and healthy. Some of these needs drive our dogs to act differently from their usual behaviour in order to fulfil them. So, what are they? Well, the first one is food and water. It's essential that you provide your new dog with a good nutritional food and healthy treats. A balanced nutritional diet will give you the head start in your training. If you feed your dog too often with high energy foods, this is going to mean you'll have to work harder to burn off the energy that it generates. It's a bit like giving a child too many sugary sweets, I guess. They tend to bounce off the ceiling until you follow that sweets with a bit of exercise. So a good quality food, and follow the feeding rates for your dog's size and age. I can recommend speaking with a pet nutritionist, and there are plenty of those around. The second basic need is shelter and safety, somewhere secure and somewhere for them to rest their heads. And whilst every dog is capable of living outdoors, most dogs are happier when there's somewhere to shelter from the elements, and they're happier still if they've got comfortable bedding. The third basic need is play, and dogs require lots of play throughout their day. It's a great way to enrich your dog's life and keep them entertained, and it helps reduce your own stress levels and improves the bond between you and your dog. Regularly play with your dog in safe and fun ways, and you'll find you'll give your dog an extra reason to want to be around you. The fourth basic need is sex. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you provide your dog with a regular mate, but because this is a basic need, it's important to understand that your dog will react to it should they come across the opportunity. So for example, if you walk your male dog down the street past a bitch who's on heat and you watch their reaction, they will change. I've seen dogs become obsessive over trying to reach the bitch, or even aggressive towards other dogs or other people who get in their way. The power of the scent given off by a bitch on heat can't be underestimated. It lingers in the environment and it causes reaction even days later. I know from experience that if any one of my dog walking clients' bitches are on heat, then the other male dogs are going to react differently to how they normally do. Sometimes for days later if I don't clean all the vehicle down and that sort of thing. If you're able to fulfill these basic needs, your dog will appreciate the value of you in their lives. A dog that's being looked after well will in turn seek to please the provider of these needs. Use this to your advantage. Show your dog that you're pleased with them, and when they do something for you, they'll strive to please you further. Now I want to look at how dogs react and the science behind it. Dogs aren't any different to humans in many respects, but it's helpful not to label them as such. They're not children, although because they're built with similar biological systems, they may act in a similar way to humans in certain circumstances. It's not my intention to dwell on the science during these lessons, but it's important to realise that if your dog is producing adrenaline or cortisol in response to an environmental stimuli, the levels of these hormones can impede your training. Hormones play a huge role in the way we and our dogs react physiologically. They are key in producing stress responses and can affect the happiness of your dog. Take a dog fearful of fireworks, for example, and place them next door to the local rugby club on the 5th of November, and we will see the dog become more stressed. Hormone levels will increase due to the elevation in stress, and hormones such as cortisol will be produced. Cortisol is known to be associated with loss of control, amongst other things, but most of us have experienced a shock in our lives and felt the physiological reaction to it. Our heart rate increases, our breathing rate increases, and we start to sweat. Our muscles tense, and our bodies basically go into kind of red alert and transfer power to make us ready to react, and it's no different in dogs. The production of these hormones is your dog's way of preparing itself to go into fight or flight. One of the physiological reactions that can occur due to increased stress in your dog is auditory exclusion or hearing loss. So while your dog is in a state of high alert due to fear, it will go into fight or flight mode and is likely not to hear you shouting at it. Or continually shouting at it may increase its level of anxiety, leading to auditory exclusion. When a dog is in a heightened state, the ability to learn is dramatically diminished. Now I want to look at setting yourself up to fail. One of the main reasons we fail at getting our dogs to follow basic commands is that we don't set the training up in the right way. Never set yourself up to fail. For example, it's no good teaching a dog to return to your side if they're off the lead for the first time, surrounded by lots of distractions like other playful dogs. It's no good asking your dog to stay in one place if they're scared, or asking them to stay and then wandering off out of sight if they can't stay in one place for very long in the first place. So before you ask your dog to do something, ask yourself, how hard is it for them to do it? Can I make it easier for them? And remember, don't test your dog, train your dog. If you know a task to be hard for your dog to do, such as staying in one place where there are distractions, be sure to make sure the reward you offer is appropriate. So for example, it's no good to offer your dog a pat on the head if they've found a specific person based on an article that you provided them, because that's a complicated task to do. We'll talk about rewards in a later lesson though. So be sure to plan your training and ask yourself what it is that you want to achieve. If all you're after is a good recall, then train recall, but reward your dog immediately when it gets back to you. Don't make it more complicated by adding in sits and heels going around the back of you. You can add those in later. Keep it simple. Simple commands like sit, wait, come, heel should all be taught separately, and then you can link them together once your dog has understood them individually. Break complicated tasks into more simple, bite-sized chunks. So in summary, don't label your dog. It's not helpful to your relationship if you are always thinking of your dog as a naughty, dominant, greedy, sneaky alpha male. Remember, your dog is an animal that is reacting to its environment in the only way it's learned how to. Patience and consistency in training is essential. Dogs have 4 basic needs: food, water, shelter and security, play, and then reproduction. Providing the first 3 can improve your dog's reaction to you. Your dog needs to satisfy these basic needs, and this can cause it to behave differently. Hormones can influence your dog's ability to learn or concentrate on you. Don't set yourself up to fail. Plan your training sessions, and we're going to come on to planning training sessions later on in this module. Thank you for listening. Next up, part 2, body language.